Hey friends, today we're going to talk about Channel 360 in human design. And this is called the Channel of Mutation, and it's located between Gate 3 in the Sacral Center and Gate 60 in the Root Center. And from a leadership perspective, I think of this as leadership through change, innovation, and also mutation. So if you have the 360 channel defined in your human design, this is what I want you to know. You carry the energy to bring something new into the world. But, and this is a big but, that doesn't mean you're here to constantly make things happen, because this channel operates in a pulse. There can be periods when absolutely nothing seems to be happening, and then suddenly something shifts, a new idea, a new breakthrough, a completely different way of doing something. Something that didn't exist before suddenly becomes possible. And understanding that rhythm can completely change the way you lead. I've had a front row seat to the energy of this channel as one of my daughters has the 360. And it's almost as if you have this on-off switch that you can't really control. It's like a pulse will come through you and you're off making something happen. And when it turns off with little or no notice, and there's no way of controlling it or turning it back on, which can be somewhat frustrating and create some melancholy. Here's the deal. It's important for you to feel your emotions, even the melancholy. Most creative people get their best ideas, or in your case, these impulses, when they feel into the depths of their feelings. So it takes a lot of trust for this one. Trust that this pulse will come back when it's time to go again. Don't force it. Instead, go do something else that brings you satisfaction. Because with this channel, like the 214, it's connected to the Sacral Center, which makes you a generator or a manifesting generator. Following what brings you satisfaction is your life's theme. You're here to create something new, and it will come when it comes. So let's look at the two gates. Gate 3 is located in the Sacral Center, and it's often called the gate of ordering. If you have this gate activated, even if you don't have the full channel, you're really going to feel this. And I think the word ordering can be a little confusing, because gate 3 isn't necessarily about keeping everything neat and organized. It's about bringing order to something new. Think about what happens when something completely new enters the system. At first, it can be a bit chaotic. Nobody knows exactly how it's going to work. There aren't procedures yet. There isn't a roadmap. There may not even be language for it yet. Gate 3 carries the energy to begin organizing that chaos so something new can actually take form. And then we have Gate 60 in the Root Center. Gate 60 is the gate of limitation. And I know, nobody really wants to hear that they have the gate of limitation. But limitation isn't necessarily negative. Limitations actually create the structure within which mutation can actually occur. Together, Gate 3 and 60 create this incredible tension between what actually exists and what's trying to become possible. And that is where mutation happens. So if you have this channel, you have an interesting relationship with limitations. You may have spent a lot of your life pushing against limitations. Why can't we do this? Why does it have to be done this way? Who made that rule? And why can't this change? Sound familiar? And quite frankly, that's part of your gift, because sometimes the limitation you're looking at has outlived its usefulness. Maybe it's a company policy. Maybe it's an old business model. Maybe it's a system or a technology. Maybe it's simply, this is the way we've always done it. And something in you knows, just knows, there has to be another way. And that's the beginning of innovation. And here's the wisdom of Gate 60. Not every limitation is meant to be broken right now. Sometimes the limitation needs to be accepted until the timing is correct for something new to emerge. And I think that can be one of the hardest lessons for this channel. Change cannot always be forced. The 360 is part of that individual circuitry, and individual energy works through a pulse on, off, on, off. There may be times when you feel this tremendous energy for change. And there may be other times when nothing seems to be moving. And if you don't understand that, you might start thinking something is wrong. Why don't I have any ideas? Why can't I figure this out? Why isn't anything happening? And why can't I get this project moving? And then you start pushing. However, mutation doesn't necessarily respond to force, to pushing. Sometimes the most powerful thing that you can do is wait for the pulse to actually come to you. And then when that energy arrives, something that seemed impossible yesterday can suddenly become obvious today. This is important in leadership because one of the biggest mistakes leaders make is believing that progress should always be linear. We should always be growing, always producing, always changing, always improving, always moving forward. However, nature doesn't work that way, and neither does the 360. Sometimes there's a period of stillness before a breakthrough. Sometimes something needs to reorganize, and sometimes the team isn't ready. Sometimes the market isn't ready, and sometimes you simply aren't ready. And sometimes the limitation itself is creating that pressure that is necessary for the next innovation to emerge. That's very different from failure. You're designed to be a disruptive leader. People with the 360 can sometimes disrupt systems simply by being themselves. You may look at something everyone else has accepted and think, why are we still doing this? And that question can change everything. You may introduce a new system, a new process, a new product, might be a new philosophy or a completely different way of thinking. And initially, people may not like it because mutation disrupts stability. Remember, you're introducing something that wasn't there before, and people don't always embrace change immediately. They may question you. They may resist you. They may tell you your idea won't work. And sometimes they're right, because not every mutation survives. And that's part of the experimentation. However, sometimes you're simply seeing the next version before everyone else can see it. So remember, don't change things just to change them. This is another important piece of having that 360. It doesn't mean every system needs to be disrupted, and it doesn't mean every rule needs to be challenged, and it doesn't mean you need to constantly reinvent everything around you. That's forcing the mutation. Your power isn't in saying everything needs to change. Your power is recognizing something is ready to change, and that's a huge difference. This is where understanding your type, your strategy, your authority can become incredibly important, because your mind may be impatient with limitations long before the energy is actually available to change that limitation. Timing's everything with this one. Your leadership requires patience with the unknown. I think this may be one of the greatest leadership lessons for the 360. You have to become comfortable with the space between the old thing no longer working and the new thing not yet existing. And that can be uncomfortable. There can be chaos there, uncertainty, confusion, and you may know something needs to change without knowing what it's going to become. And that's exactly where your leadership is needed, because leadership during mutation isn't necessarily having all the answers. Sometimes leadership is being able to say, I know this isn't working anymore. I don't exactly know what the new version is going to look like yet, and I'm willing to stay present while it emerges. That's powerful leadership. So the challenge of the 360 channel, because of course every strength has a challenge, for the 360, one of the biggest challenges can be frustration with limitations. You can feel the pressure for something to change, and yet nothing's happening. And that's when you try to force the breakthrough. Push the team, push the project, push yourself, throw everything out, start over, do something. Just remember, the pulse cannot be forced, and neither can true mutation. Sometimes the limitation you're fighting isn't stopping the breakthrough. It's actually part of the process that's creating that breakthrough. So if you lead with the 360, stop asking, how do I make something happen? And start asking, is something actually ready to change? Learn to recognize the difference between resistance and timing. Learn to sit with the limitations without assuming they mean you're stuck forever. Let yourself experiment when the energy arrives. Let yourself bring order to the chaos of something new. And don't assume that periods of stillness mean you're doing something wrong, because you're not necessarily here to create constant change. You're here for something much more powerful. You're here to recognize when the old way has reached its limit and carry the energy for something new to emerge. And sometimes the greatest leadership isn't maintaining what already exists. Sometimes leadership is having the courage to participate in what wants to exist next. And that is the leadership of the 360 Channel of Mutation. If this resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Do you have this channel in your human design? And be sure to follow or subscribe, because we'll be exploring leadership through all 36 human design channels.